Okay, so the tournament's going to start soon, and before it starts, let's do a demo board real quick, right? So for Saturday Go Club, we usually do our little lesson, and so what I wanted to talk about today is some basic terminology, and this will be, I guess, like a multi-part series, right? Because I like to make these sort of bite-sized chunks. Neko, yeah, lesson. Neko, for anyone who doesn't know, is stronger than me. You know, I got nothing to teach Neko, but he a big supporter. What's up, Kyle?
If you're going to do terminology, you should pull up that Conquest of Go.
Oh yeah, that's true. That would be a good chance to do it. Since we only have like a little bit of time, I'm not going to do it right now. But yeah, one of the nice things about the Conquest of Go, it looks like as you play, they try to associate terminology with your moves to try and help you understand. So 9 stones is never enough. Yeah. Okay, thanks, Deca. Thanks. Yeah, so let's talk about some terminology, and I think this is really valuable, especially for beginners. I mean, it's valuable for everyone, but it's more important to learn as a beginner, because like being able to talk about the game, I think really helps in understanding the game, right? If you have the words to put to the board, then it just helps you think about it. Things are less nebulous because you can sort of assemble things in pieces. So let's just talk about a few words that come up all the time, and I have listed like 40 words in my notepad document. I think we'll do maybe, I don't know, 10 or so in this first lesson, just to start getting used to it. So let's see, I've pulled up a 13 by 13 board that looks like it is visible. Let me close that. There we go, that makes it look a little bit better. And kibitz is a fun word to learn. Oh yeah, I don't have that on my list, but hey, let's talk about that one first. Kibitzing is just talking about a game of Go. So if like you're in the chat box while a game is going and you're talking about the game, that's kibitzing. It's very often in the streamer world we talk about kibitzing, because like if I'm playing an important game, I would ask the chat not to kibitz, just because I don't want to be influenced by the chat, right? And there are some people who are known for their excellent kibitzing. Oh, you knew it from card games. Nice. I didn't realize. I've never heard it outside of Go. So speaking of words that we can hear outside of Go, corner, side, center, right? Okay, super easy. But look, here's a typical Go board, and it doesn't have to be this way. Typical Go board is square, and we have corners. That's like this area, right? We have sides, and it's sort of nebulous to say like, okay, well, what point is it no longer a corner? What point is it no longer a side? But okay, the side, we're talking about the border of the board, not including the corner. In the center, we're talking about this big old hunkin' middle part, right? Corner, side, center, and in general, that's the priority of interest. We're interested in corners because they're very efficient. We're interested in sides because they're kind of efficient. And then the center, we're very interested in if there's special tactics, okay? But it's the most difficult place to make points in the game. Cool. So also, speaking of board orientation, this is really important, and it's super difficult on online, talking about the game online, because, and actually, you know, since the tournament is going to be starting in 20 minutes, let me go ahead and link it in chat real quick, so y'all can start joining that if you're interested. Okay, but speaking of board orientation, right? So when we're playing online, we're all looking at the board in the exact same direction. Whether I'm playing against you or whether you're watching with me, we're all looking at it. The first line is always here. It's not rotated in any way or anything like that. But typically, in more traditional Go without a pandemic, we'd all be looking at the board from different angles, right? Me and my opponent sit across from each other. People watching might be looking on the side. So we have lots of terms for Go which are independent of the way you're looking at the board. So in general, we sort of think, for terminology, we think of the board as sort of a mountain where Tengen, the center point, is the top. And so when we say upward or downward, when we talk about upward, we're talking about moving toward the center of the board. When we say downward, we're talking about moving toward the edge of the board, right? So if I have a move here and my opponent does this, which is an attachment, they play right next to my stone. If I ascend, then I do this. If I descend, then I do this. Okay? So even though that might feel backwards right now, because the way that all of us are looking at the board right now, we think of up as this, right? So that feels like ascending, but that's descending because we're moving toward the edge of the board. Yeah, that would be interesting to actually represent the board as a pyramid. It would make it harder to look at, I guess, but it would help to understand that. And what's up, Mimi31K? If y'all don't know, Mimi is also a streamer, very talented player, good explainer as well. Okay, so yeah, and so there's another term, right? Attach. And then here's the next term that I want to introduce is respond. Okay, so if I play here, in fact, let's do it like this. If I play here, my opponent plays here. This is an approach. If I, let's say, play here, I have responded. In other words, my opponent played in this part of the board, and I also played in this general part of the board, so I responded. If I do something else, that's a tanuki. And again, it can be sort of vague because there's a gray area in between, right? Let's say, I don't know, my opponent has a stone here, and I play this in response to this this approach. Have I responded to the approach? Well, maybe my move is relevant, right? And truly every move should consider the whole board. So I don't know, there can be some gray areas as to whether you call something a response or a tanuki, but in general, those are what we mean. If you respond, you play locally. If you tanuki, you play away from where your opponent just played. And that brings up another one, and this is probably the most common question because this is a super common terminology. We talk about this all the time. That is sente versus gote. So, in general, sente is a word that we use in a couple different ways, but it basically means the same thing. We can say that a move is sente, but we can also say that I have sente. So if I have sente, it basically means that I have the initiative. There's nothing so urgent on the board that I have to respond. And so I can do whatever I want. Now, truly, anytime it is your turn, you have sente. If you want to lose a 30-point group and in exchange you want to make a 1-point, end game thing, you can do that. But in general, we would say you wouldn't have sente at that point. You should go play the 30-point move to save the group. Okay, so if there's an approach and I respond, then white did this in sente. Let's see, if I tanuki whatever my opponent does, then they did it in gote. And a fun way to think about the difference is if you hope your opponent will respond, then your move is gote. And that feels a little bit opposite sometimes, right? But in other words, if you play a move and you're like, wow, I really hope that I can do this in sente, I hope that they respond, that means that there's likely something else on the board that's bigger. And so probably your move is gote. But if you play a move and you say, I hope they don't respond, that would be great. If I play this move and they don't do anything about it, that would be wonderful. Please play somewhere else. Then your move is sente, right? Because they have to respond, basically, assuming that you have a good understanding of the board at that time. Okay, that's sente and gote. It's like and it's super common to talk about it in endgame, right? So let's say there's this and this, okay? And so, okay, and just to illustrate, right? I'm saying like this is black's territory somehow, and then this is like white territory somehow. Okay. So if black plays this endgame, this is usually what we would call sente. So the sequence would be black, white, something like that. And so now black can go do something else. Of course, they wouldn't fight over the endgame if this were the actual board, but just to illustrate. So in the sequence, we would say it was sente for black. Black played first, and black gets to play again at the end of the sequence. Black got initiative. It was sente. But let's say white had a stone here. So same thing. Black tries to come into white's territory. White blocks. Black blocks. But now white doesn't owe a move. White can go do something else on the board. So now we would say this is a gote sequence for black. Cool. Okay, so black started the sequence and ended without initiative. Cool. Sorry, just checking on chat. And one thing to note, when we talk about Sente and Gote, you can get obsessed with it. You can think, I always want Sente. And in endgame, that's basically true. Anything you can do in Sente is great. But we have to be careful in mid-game and early game. Sometimes you can do something that is Sente, but it will actually help your opponent. Or sometimes you might be afraid to do something because it's Gote. For example, invasions are often Gote. And it's not the end all be all. It's okay. You can't always have Sente, right? Go is in a perfect world with you and a equally skilled opponent in a balanced world. You're both going to be trading Sente, right? Same thing with points. You can't have all the points. You can't kill everything. It's always a push and a pull. And your goal is to get more than your opponent. But just remember, you don't have to have overwhelmingly more. So it's okay. It's okay to take Gote sometimes. Sometimes you trade initiative for some stability in a local area, or you trade initiative in exchange for having an established invasion somewhere, things like that. There are plenty of reasons to give away Sente. Those are just some of them. Bats what? Okay, I don't know. I don't know what your bat's wedding, God Game Cthulhu. Well, cool. So we still have just a little bit of time, so let's hit a few more terms. Let's talk about jumping versus crawling, right? Let's say this. Well, ignore the board position. I'm just putting some stones on the board to illustrate things. If we do this, in fact, let's make it a little bit. Let's do it like this. If black plays here, there's a few things that we could say that this is. In one way, we could call it a nobi. A nobi is like when you attach to your stone and sort of crawl. And then that's the other word I want to use is crawl. So when we just move like one space like this, we're crawling. And that's fine. Sometimes it's very appropriate to crawl. It's strong. Your stones stay connected. But it can also be a little bit slow. So then the next thing I want to talk about is a jump. And so when you jump, in Go, the stones don't move, but the shapes do, right? And so when we jump from some stones, we are stretching out their general influence, even though we're not exactly connected. And when we say an X space jump, we're talking about the number of spaces in between. So in this case, White did a 2-space jump from this wall, right? So beginners get confused on that a lot, right? So 2-space jump means 2 in between. It doesn't mean it's on the second line. So 3-space jump would be here. 1-space jump would be here. Cool. And it doesn't have to be from a wall. So like this, that's a 1-space jump. No problem. 2-space jump. Cool. Another general movement is a knight's move or an extended knight's move, right? So that's a knight's move. So that just comes from chess. In chess, a knight moves 1 over and 2 down, or 2 across, whatever. And an extended knight's move or a long knight's move would be like this, right? Just 1 space longer, no problem. Diagonal or kosumi, that one. Oh, knight's move is called a kema as well. Yeah, diagonal like that. And that's about all we'll go over. Okay, so there's some just basic things. So in your games, try to recognize them. So as you're talking about the game, try to say, oh, White responded with a nobi, right? Okay, something like that. And as you build that terminology, I think that's going to help you a lot thinking about the game. Especially think about Sente and Gote. And if you don't get it, that's fine. Just keep thinking about it. And I would encourage you to keep trying to talk about it, even if you're a little bit unsure. And if you get it wrong, people will correct you. And they may or may not be kind about it. Usually they'll be kind about it. Go is a pretty accepting community. But for example, even when I started this stream, there were 2 words. Yeah, true. There were 2 words that I used interchangeably, which apparently are not interchangeable, which is heavy and overconcentrated. To me, those words meant the same thing. And as I started to use them in my stream, people got on to me a little bit. They're like, hey, I wouldn't call that heavy. It's overconcentrated. It's not heavy. Okay. So we'll talk about those words a little bit later. we talk about them all the time during the stream, but it's kind of nice to have them agglomerated, into our Saturday Go lessons, which we publish on YouTube and put in a playlist, so you can see them there. Cool. All right. Well, let's check out the tournament then, and we'll just wait. So that's our little beginner lesson for the week. If anyone has any questions, I'm happy to answer. If there's freedom, liberty. I know y'all hate when I